Good morning, everyone. Now, as Steve said, we are marking a decade of tracking the evolution of digital audio advertising in Australia, and we've done this industry survey for 10 years, a survey of buy-side advertising decision makers. And today, to unpack these key findings from the report and to explore what they mean for the market, I'm joined by some leading voices from the sell side of the industry. So we have Steve, Dennis and Kim here this morning. Thank you. So I'm going to bring our panellists in shortly to highlight some of the key opportunities, innovations and challenges in digital audio advertising from the State of the Nation report. But firstly, some brand new market data. So only released yesterday, the IAB Internet Advertising Revenue Report for calendar year 2025 shows that strong investment in digital audio is continuing. So the total Australian internet audio advertising market last year was $339 million, and that was up 8% year on year. Podcasting growth outpaced streaming audio, so it was up 13.5%, and streaming music up 5% year on year. So digital audio did grow at a slightly slower rate than the overall internet ad market. So overall total investment in the market increased 11.5% to $18.4 billion, which is that growth predominantly driven by search and video. So video advertising continues to be the strongest performing segment of the market, and that was up nearly 20%. Other display environments are seeing much more modest growth, and we've got podcast, as you can see here, that's continuing to outpace the market. So let's dive into what's driving this growth in digital audio. So there are a number of strong drivers for digital audio, and audience attention and engagement has been reinforced as the number one reason that ad buyers are using the channel. The largest year-on-year increase in these drivers is coming from talent and content creators, and that's risen up the list this year to be the number 2 driver. There's also been strong growth in the usage of digital audio for brand building and for brand integrations and custom executions. There is a high level of experimentation with podcast creators and talent. And we've got 6 in 10 respondents here having now used them in a campaign. So this is a big opportunity here for digital audio advertising, as the creator economy overall is one of the fastest growing sectors of all media. So in the US market, it's estimated to be growing 4 times faster than the broader media market. So Kim, I'm going to bring you in here. Many buyers, you can see here, experimenting with talent and creators. What's next? What does a more mature phase of creator-led marketing look like?
I feel like Steve stole a lot of my notes in his opening speech, because I am in violent agreement with what Steve was saying at the top. If you think about audio, I think we can all agree it's the home of the original influencer. What is a live read done well, if not influence? And we've seen it evolve as those radio shows move into streaming and then into podcasting, and then they've now created entire communities who are really authentic and engaged. And so I think what's next is looking at a brief not just as an audio brief and as a video brief, as a social brief. It's now a holistic community-based brief with audio as that bedrock foundation in the podcast space, where they can spend longer times with a brand and really explore it. Because when you think about, why do I go to Instagram and consume what I consume there? Why do I go to TikTok? Why do I go to YouTube or any other video platform? They're all different. So brands have the opportunity to think about a brief as a holistic omni-platform and omni-delivery method brief, as opposed to a vertical by vertical brief. But again, coming back to that, it's the bedrock of audio that then leads to those other channels. As you said earlier, Steve, we've seen it kind of switch the other way around now. So I think thinking of those as an entire brief, not a piece by piece brief.
A bit more strategically.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. The report also shows that the usage of video podcasts is emerging. So this is potentially a powerful combination of the intimacy of audio and the visual impact of video. So we've got 25% of buyers who are saying that they have so far included video podcasts in a campaign. And there is very strong interest here. We've got 50% saying that they are researching this particular format. So I'm going to ask Steve to give us a little bit of context on what is a video podcast execution at the moment and how might that evolve in time.
Yeah, I think first of all, video podcasting, how exciting for the audio industry. We finally have a legit visual medium that we can kind of go back to clients with. I think what's been interesting looking at the video podcasting industry, like over the last few months, is the fact that the consumption curve and the revenue has followed. Like the fact there's 25% of buyers already placing ads in and around video is a great stat from the first times we've had that in the report. I think what I want to make sure is that people are actually placing the videos in the content and not around the content. If that 25% of buyers is buying ads on YouTube in and around the podcast, that's not video podcasting. You're just buying more video inventory. So video podcasting is just another distribution platform for that content creator, okay? Like Kim was saying, it shouldn't be sat on a silo. It's not video podcasting or podcasting. It's all of it. It's about the content creators ecosystem. And what's really good to see is that video podcasters, as they're maturing, are actually building building with brands in mind and building with content integration in mind. So around the world, if you look at people like Flight Story in the UK, which is the home of Stephen Bartlett and Diary of a CEO, available at Nova Entertainment, they're actually building like world-class studios where it's literally a set. It's no longer a studio, it's a set, and they're integrating green screens into the set foundation so they can then dynamically ad serve visual kind of ads and content into the set, but so it doesn't have to be baked in, because that's the issue you're going to find in video. If you do stunts in video, if you put product placement, it's going to be baked in, and that content creator is not going to be able to monetize that opportunity again. So, and we've seen that from platforms as well. You know, the tools that kind of the Googles, the Spotifys, the Apples are building for content creators is to be able to create advertorial content or advertiser content, place it into the video feed, but then once the campaign's finished, remove it without messing around with the content. So, you know, it's good to see that, to answer the question, there's plentiful amount of creative executions that are already there, but I think the real kind of place in the media mix is to use the whole of the content creators ecosystem and treat video as another distribution channel. It's not either or, it's and. So we're just going to invest more and more into these content creators, video is just part of the package now.
Awesome. We'll see what this one looks like next year. Okay, so a couple of opportunities there. Now to a challenge. So measurement standardisation and clearer evidence of effectiveness is a barrier to marketers and agencies increasing investment in digital audio. So you can see here a range of measurement tools that are being used to assess the effectiveness of digital audio advertising, with that continued reliance on delivery metrics and also brand lift. Investment confidence increasingly depends on outcomes-based measurement that can demonstrate the contribution of the audio channel and its formats to ROI. So the risk here is that if marketers can't measure the channel easily, that they may invest less. So we have 44% of buy side here assessing audio investment using MMM, market mix modelling, and 32% using online conversion tracking. So if we looked at this question for digital video buyers, their importance of the MMM tool is higher than this. However, they still have a very similar challenge. So getting those quality data signals at the volume and the granularity that is needed for MMM is a broader challenge that's shared. However, the top measurement challenge that is facing digital audio buyers is the fragmentation of audio formats. So each often use different tracking methods, and that makes it quite difficult to get comparable and holistic view of campaign performance. There are a range of opportunities that buyers see for incorporating AI into audio advertising, and many of these are measurement related. So there are a range of AI-powered improvements here that can help with measurement challenges. Dennis, I'm going to ask you the challenge question. Can we measure audio with the same financial confidence as the rest of our media mix?
Look, the short answer is yes, but I have a minute, and so I'll use it all. Look, at the moment, what we all have is those common metrics. We have reach, frequency. You can get the really basic stuff straight away. And then from a additional measurement point of view, we've had some really significant strides in the last 3 to 4 years. And it goes back from the basics, a really well-placed and utilised vanity URL or offer code still works for some brands. We've been using website attribution modelling for the last 6 or 7 years, and I think the opportunity is for brands to place that on further parts of that consumer journey. We've all done brand lifts. We all use brand lifts quite consistently. And then we start to go into some of the really cool stuff, which is things like we've started to see, particularly over the last year, footfall attribution grow in importance and grow in capability, as well as purchase data as well. So what we've got at the moment is what consumers are hearing, what they're thinking about what they're hearing, what they're doing as a result of what they're hearing, and what they're buying. And that's a really compelling suite of tools that brands can utilise. And I think the brands that are leaning in, and sorry, Steve, I know you hate that word, they're leaning in, they're understanding the methodology behind that measurement, and they're also communicating that measurement in an effective way. They're going to reap the benefits of it as well.
And you think AI will help bridge some of these gaps that
No, hot take, it's not. No, of course it is. AI will be a really interesting view over the next 12 months. I think it's present pretty much right through the process for a lot of us. Where I see the biggest impact is in that optimisation phase in campaign to ensure that we're moving investment and adjusting investment in real time to get to the right outcome quicker. And then also in the post-campaign, synthesising data sets, synthesising the outcomes to inform the planning process, I think will be a really powerful way to get to great recommendations for brands to drive outcomes very, very quickly.
Just a couple of IAB notes here. The IAB in the US earlier this year have commenced a project called Project EDOS, which is there to define the industry principles, standards and frameworks that will enable AI-driven measurement. So we'll be looking at that very closely. The IAB Australia, locally, we've also identified the future of measurement as one of our strategic focus areas for this year, and we are undertaking industry consultation that will help us also to identify those industry-driven measurement infrastructure that is needed in our market into the future. So we look forward to sharing some more information on those two projects as we go through the year. So just to wrap up today, the prospects for future growth in digital audio are positive. We can see here that our buyers are signalling the potential for further increases in digital audio investment this year. We've got 69% of buyers who plan to increase original content audio podcast, and 56% plan to increase streaming music ad investment. So I'm going to ask each of our panellists today to summarise what they think is needed to support long-term sustainable growth in digital audio. We might start with you.
I think fundamentally our job as publishers and as media owners, and we are becoming tech platforms as well, is to continue creating content that engages, entertains, informs Australians. And the net result of that is audiences that brands want to reach. I think we have shown as an industry, it's certainly seeing what happens overseas, the collaborative nature of how the Australian publisher industry works. We are very much about sharing insights, results, what works, because our job, apart from doing that job for the Australian consumer, is to do that job for Australian businesses who want to reach those various consumers. We have to continue to be willing to break what we have already built, whether that be building new capabilities or personalisation into our own tech platforms, or coming up with entirely new content, because at the end of the day as well, we have to be continually keeping up with the capabilities that enable us to be measurable. We've seen how important that is to brands. No one's budgets are getting any bigger, so we have to prove that every dollar is working and is meeting the objective of that brand. And that means we keep up with technology and sometimes completely changing the direction of what we have built or what we are doing, and we have to keep being willing to do that. I would say on the flip side, for me, the challenge to brands then is we are sharing all this data that we possibly can out. The missing link for us is often getting some data back. You know, we can see, did we drive closed loop attribution? Did that person hear that ad, engage with that content, or watch that video and go to that website? All of those sorts of things. But there's sentiment around creativity. Can we measure, you know, do brands see a percentage sales lift? Those sorts of things. We're not asking brands to disclose highly confidential and what is their secret sauce, but for us to be able to share as an industry and to other brands as well, we need some reciprocal sharing back to us. Yeah.
Yeah. So some innovation and some collaboration, particularly around that measurement piece. Awesome. Janice.
Okay. I think laddering on what Kim said is taking those insights and then elevating and educating the broader industry. I think we've done an okay job at engaging particularly media agencies in the power of audio, but I think it's time for us to go wider, more brand custodians right across the board. So brands themselves, into creative agencies, performance agencies, social influencer agencies as well, because there's an incredible power in what we work with day in, day out that is misunderstood and I think underappreciated. And then I think the personal thing for me is utilising the intentionality of particularly podcast. People do not happen upon a podcast. They sample it because they're interested in it. They stay because they love it. And so the ability for brands in Australia, and we don't see a lot of them, to invest long-term in particular content or particular content verticals is a really unexplored opportunity, in the same way that they should be considering it the same way as a sports sponsorship or a TV sponsorship in a lot of ways, because there's a lot we can do utilising that 360-degree ecosystem of these creators to drive outcomes for businesses in the long term.
More of a longer term strategic
Exactly.
approach rather than campaign. Awesome.
I think I'm going to say the same thing in a different way. I think one thing we haven't covered, though, is a lot more industry collaboration. I think one of the main reasons that the revenue hasn't followed the audience growth is because there's a lot of friction in the buy. We're incredibly fragmented as kind of publishers. There's friction in the buy. We don't make it always terribly easy to buy audio. So I think that's kind of one of the things we have to continue to work on, because this last year and this year we've taken great steps forward. We think around the CRA Audio ID. There's now 4 publishers that kind of pulled their inventory together for a unified reach and frequency to 14.7 million IDs. That's a massive bit of scale now that is all kind of centralised and you can manage in one campaign. So, but that's kind of the first step. There's obviously the next horizon for that is to kind of have an audio exchange where you can come in at one transaction point. So that's all very exciting stuff happening in there. The wider industry needs to collaborate more to take that friction out of the buyer. I think the second thing, and I echo kind of what Kim and Dennis have said, is that longer term partnerships. I see far too many times so much work, so much planning, so much strategy goes into like a podcast sponsorship or a creator sponsorship, and it runs for 4 weeks and then it stops, and then they don't talk to that audience again. You're like, if there's so much research, so much proof that if you run a brand, partners with a content creator and runs it for a period of time, there's that compounding kind of ROI, compounding brand lift, compounding like brand affinity with that audience that actually the brand starts seeing in their business metrics, not just their media metrics. So they're the 2 things I would say.
Momentum. Some great advice there from our 3 panellists. I'm just going to pause if there's any questions from the audience before we let these lovely people go. Anything this morning? No? Oh, here, sorry, I can't see down the front, sorry.
Steve, you were responding back to the 25% growth, and you made a comment about buying around YouTube is not buying podcasts, and I really like that. And so my follow-up question to that is, do we think that 25% growth is people who are saying, I'm going to now buy a video podcast, or is they looking at it and saying that video buy I was buying is actually now a podcast?
I think the wording on the slide was that 25% of buyers have bought into a video podcast. And when I saw that, I was like, if they are, amazing, that's great. I question the amount of people that are buying into the podcast. We do see great brand integration. Lego springs to mind. They do some fantastic integration into video podcasting and with their product placement and people talking about it. Speaking to some colleagues, I was on a call last week with TalkSport in the UK, and I asked them the same question: are people buying into the video podcast or around it? And they seem to believe that people are buying around it. It's video impressions before or after the video content, which for me isn't buying into a video podcast and isn't using the distribution channel effectively. So yeah, I don't think this industry needs any more video inventory, and I think that kind of integration for brands in with the content creator is where you're going to get your most bang for buck.
Thank you. I've got another one here.
If I understood correctly, one of the top reasons a buyer wants to buy audio is for attention. But if I also understood another one of the slides, on the measurement slide, most buyers want campaign measurement, but only 11% wanted attention measurement. Are these two things mutually inclusive? Are they kind of saying two things at once, but they don't line up? How do you make sense of that?
Oh, is that a me one? I think it was the question, correct me if I'm wrong, Nat, it's usage of. So they're using those metrics, not necessarily the 11% currently using the attention metrics. I'd love them to use more attention metrics because you don't have to look too bloody far to realise that people are paying attention to a podcast. So I think the attribution modelling is also one that is underutilised at this point.
No worries. Oh, one more behind you, Jim.
Just on that, the attribution modelling one, why do you think it's so underutilised? Like you said, you've been using it for 6-7 years. You know, it's not just about reach and frequency, it's fragmented, but actually the tech is out there to do that. So whose job is it to educate the market, to be pushing brands themselves, to be making sure that you're following up on conversions, leads, purchases, which will then unlock more budget in the future?
Andy, we knew it was going to be a hard one, that one. Look, we've had the attribution modelling, and I think there's attribution and conversion tracking, online conversion tracking there. The key challenge we have is the, I guess, reluctance to place pixels across the user journey. I think a lot of brands like the idea of it, but when rubber hits the road, there is a whole bunch of alarm bells that go through. So I think there is an opportunity for us as publishers, as tech platforms, and for attribution and online conversion tracking businesses as well to further educate and address probably the security concerns or misconceptions around that to ensure that the investment is going there.
Can I say to that? I think sometimes we look at these stats and we're like, oh, people are only using 12% of attribution modelling or conversion tracking. Like, I would say measurement costs money, right? Measurement takes resource. There's more time into the campaign. Sometimes you have to pay for it. I think you don't. If you're a brand that understands the channel and the benefits of the channel, and there's case studies to prove it, you're already on your way. So you'll probably start, you won't start using it. I think the measurement, the attribution, and all of that needs to be used for brands that are on the fence or haven't used audio or don't believe audio can drive them an outcome. And I think that's back to the question of how we're going to keep that sustainable growth in revenue is those new clients. And I think measurement's really important for the new clients coming in who are unsure of audio or haven't tested it and don't believe all the case studies we have. Like that's where we need to use it, and that's where we need to be educating the market. I think people that already use audio know the power of audio and have got their case studies. I see more and more clients not using measurement because they're like, we know it works. We know it works, and it's going to continue on. And there's obviously the way people are buying now through platforms and programmatically. There's other measurement attribution products that sit in the platforms, so they don't need it from a publisher. So I think it's a mixed bag for measurement. It's something that always comes up in our State of the Nation report, but it's getting better and better.
I think as part of that as well, whose job is it to do that education. It's obviously us as publishers, part of that onus sits on us to tell the buyer, the agency and all of that sort of thing, but part of it also sits with the agency or the indie that's working with that brand to help share that education as well. I think one thing that's probably lacking is an understanding of it doesn't have to be a different pixel for everything. You know, we all use the same vendors. We can use the same pixel. It's not making it triply hard because you've got ARN, SCA and Nova and then whoever else from an audio perspective and a TV perspective. Like, we are part of the industry that uses the same attribution tools.
Any other questions? We might grab our panellists afterwards. So I'd like to thank very much for your contribution this morning.